let me just be very clear. No estimates is for you if this is how you feel when people mention, it's estimation time again. If you look at them like this, no estimates is for you. If you're bored of arguing about whether a story is a 3 or a 5, and you have no clue what those mean, if you're bored of seeing other people fight and even get angry at each other just because they don't agree on a random number assigned to a story that is not even fully understood yet, this is for you. It's also for you if this is how you look at giving estimates to someone else. If in your organization estimates are booby-trapped, and in many they are, no estimates is for you. That's how I felt when I was a project manager and I had to go to the board and present the project plan, of course, filled with estimates. But no estimates is also for you if you want to stop worrying about all of this bureaucracy and start focusing on making your customers happy. Because there's 10 principles in this presentation, and we could talk about many more principles that come from the ideas of no estimates, which, by the way, I'll just dispel that myth. No estimates isn't new. I'm only applying ideas that I've read from guys that were old during the Second World War. So this is not about coming up with a new fancy idea. This is about applying knowledge we have in our society to problems we face every day. Finland, the country where I came from today, has a healthcare project. The healthcare project is estimated, yes, I did say estimated, to cost about 400 million euros. And that's just the first phase of that project. The whole project, over many years, is estimated to cost 2 billion euros. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've worked in the software industry long enough to know that if somebody says a piece of software, costs 2 billion euros, they're BSing all the way to Mars. Because there's no way that a piece of software costs that much money. There's no way that a piece of software delivers that much money if it's estimated to last in development 4 or 5 years, because you know as well as I do that if something is estimated to last 4 or 5 years, it's probably going to take 10. And in some cases, it's never, ever going to be delivered. In the book, I talk about a case of Accenture working for the NHS that literally got out of a £1 billion penalty. i.e., were supposed to pay £1 billion to the UK government, and somehow they got out of it. This was a software project, just like the one in Finland. Funnily enough, Estonia, smaller country, perhaps that's why they're smarter, but smaller country did a similar project for 300 million. And that's the whole project for the whole country, not phase 1. The fact is, we have to own up. You guys, if you work in the software industry, the future is you. You are creating the future of our children. And it's time we stop playing like if we didn't know estimates didn't work, because they don't. And I'll show you some data about that. Here's something that works. Who knows what this is? Hands up. Somebody throw the name. Shinkansen. Absolutely. Who knows how late these trains were, on average, in the whole year of 2014? Well, on average was 54 seconds. But that includes natural catastrophes. Yeah, I'm not joking. In 97, this was their record, 97, they were 14 seconds late on average. Now, think about your software projects. If you could put any feature, whatever feature, put one feature in one carriage of that train, your software project, and deliver it with a delay of 54 seconds, wouldn't that be great? Right? You know what that does to you? If I'm to take the Shinkansen and go to Tokyo, I can decide whether I should go half an hour earlier or half an hour later, And maybe if I go half an hour earlier, I have a beer with a friend, I visit that manga shop I've been wanting to visit for a long time. I can make that decision even if I have a can't miss appointment, like for example, catching a flight or meeting a very important business prospect. I can make that decision because I trust that the train will work. When I go to the platform, I'm not stressed out. I'm not worried about what will fail. I'm not worried about missing my very important business meeting. Therefore, I don't need to go the night before, and I don't need to pay for an extra hotel night. And if you guys know how hotels are in Tokyo, you know that's not a pleasant experience, right? Small matchboxes, basically you barely have space to put your luggage, let alone sleep in it. But this is what this kind of systems does. Predictable, reliable systems that deliver value on time. When you enter the Shinkansen, I don't know how trains work here in Poland, but I can tell you some stories. Somehow I knew that you guys were going to react like that. But I can tell you some stories about the trains in Finland. You know, in Finland, there's basically only 4 problems with the train. Only 4. It's winter, spring, summer, and fall. Right? Winter comes, tracks are frozen. We can't go as fast as we should to keep the schedule, so we're late. The fall comes, there's leaves on the floor. So the train has to go slower because it takes longer to brake. Why didn't you think of that before? It's not like summer, winter, spring, and fall are new things. They were there for, well, I don't know how long they've been there, but for a long time. And this is what they did. What they did is something that we need to do. When we go back to work, what we need is to build a Shinkansen track in our processes. It's very simple. They did not try to improve the old system. They built a completely new trunk so that these trains would never have to face slower trains, road crossings, animals dying on the tracks. Yeah, this happens. Just happened to a friend of mine in Germany. They were caught up for 1.5 hours outside Munich because the train couldn't go. So that's how you build a reliable, predictable process. You don't try to improve something that was broken to start with. You don't try to get better at estimates to be predictable. That's not just a bad idea. It's a waste of lives. It's an increase in stress levels in your organization. It's more people that churn and go to the competitor. It's more failed projects. It's more lost money. And if you don't believe me, that's okay. You don't need to. I'll show you the data. And best of all, if you email me or SMS me, you will actually get the book and you get to try this on your own so that you learn how it works for you. Because I don't know how this works for you. These are just the principles. So principle 1, you either trust your process or you change your process. Period. Don't trust it, don't try to make it better. Change it. Do root cause analysis, try no estimates, do XP, do Kanban, change your strategy, whatever it is, don't stick to it. There's plenty of evidence out there that you can't get better at estimates. I mean, you can think you're better than average, and most people do, which begs the question then, what does average mean? But the fact is, we don't know as an industry. You might know as an individual, you might have this magic wand, but as an industry, we don't know how to get better at estimates. Here's a project. The blue phase on the left side is what we would normally call the development phase. The red phase, 2/3 of the project, is what many would call testing or validation phase. I prefer to call it desperately testing and fixing phase because that's what actually happens then. This project, which is just one of many that I've worked in, has one particular problem. Where are the problems? Imagine you are here at the peak of this bug curve. These are the number of open bugs in your system. You are here at the peak. When is the project going to be delivered? Anyone care to venture a guess? never, well, we know it's not already delivered because there's still some more to go, but never would be a fair guess. My point is, at that point, you have no idea. And see how long this phase is. It's 2/3 of the whole time of the project. In project management, we have a saying. The first 90% of my project went swell. I hope the second half goes as well. And there's a reason why that saying exists. It's because when you are here, you don't know how long it will take. No matter how much you try, there just simply isn't an answer to that question that is based on the available information. I mean, there's a lot of guesswork, obviously, gut feelings, but not based on the available information. The steep curve here, a lot of bugs dropped. That's not magic. That's us removing one by one. Say, okay, won't fix, won't fix, won't fix, won't fix. And that's what reality looks like in projects that actually have to go to the market. You have to decide what you will not fix. You have to decide the crap you will have to live with from then on. And you see the blue line slowly goes down, but then comes up again. Because, and this is not magic again, it's quite obvious. The more you test, the more bugs you find. The more bugs you find, the more bugs you fix. And what happens when you fix a lot of bugs? You add more bugs, right? It's a never-ending loop. So estimate that process for me. The reason why this project ended here, this was when it went live, was not because we were good at estimates. It was because the top management came down to the team room and said, guys, you release tomorrow or we're canceling the project. And the product owner had to say, okay, we're going live then, I guess. But you're laughing, and it's good that you're laughing, but this is true. This is what happened. In that company, we did a survey. We looked at many projects. Average desperately testing and fixing phase was 90 days, 3 months. Average for large projects, 90 days, 3 months. Average for small projects, 90 days. Average for medium-sized projects, 90 days. Of course, I don't believe in coincidences. I'm the data guy, right? So we looked into it. We figured out that that's how long top management was willing to wait before coming down and basically saying either you go live or we cancel the project. So how good was the estimate? The answer is it doesn't matter how good it was because top management decided when to go live anyway. So the question was not how late are we, the question is how late can you afford to be? And when you ask the question that way, then it's not about estimating. It's about making sure you're ready to deliver at every single point in the project, which, by the way, is what agile and iterative software development was all about to begin with. So principle 2, shorten the feedback cycle. That's what we need to do in order to be ready to release. Right? We can't wait until the end of the project to see if the estimate was right. We have to be right every day. If we're going to release a project before Christmas, and I used to work in consumer software, so it's like this in consumer software. Many people think that in order to be on time, you have to be ready in, beginning of December, something like that. Well, it's not like that, actually. What happens is like this. In December, you have to have the box in the shelf at the retailer. But the retailer will select their Christmas portfolio in early October so that they can ship it to the shops in November so that the boxes are actually in the shelves in December. In order for us to be in the catalog of the distributors, we have to have the software ready and shipped in September. So for us, there was no we're just a couple of days late. Because that meant missing Christmas, and Christmas was 30% of our annual sales. That's a bet you are not allowed to take in that kind of business. So for us, being late was not an option. So we needed to figure out, okay, how are we always on time? How are we so on time that we have no doubt we will be on time? that there's no guesswork involved, no estimation involved, right? That's what we needed to learn. We needed to face that struggle. So we need to ask this question from ourselves. Can estimates actually be accurate? And I definitely recommend J.B. Rainsberger's video from 2013 ORDEV. It's a 7-minute video, so it's awesome. You have to watch it. It's beautiful, he's very eloquent, and he tells you a very simple truth. This: the cost and duration of something is a factor of its essential complication and its accidental complication. So what is essential complication? It's basically how hard the problem is, right? I mean, if you're doing tax calculation, that's super hard, right? If you're shipping a Mars rover to Mars, that's easy, but tax calculation, right? That's really, really tough. So that's what essential complication is. Accidental complication is everything else. JB calls it the we are not so good at our jobs factor, right? It's like we take shortcuts, so we make the code really crappy for the next iteration. Or we're in so much of a hurry that we forget to test. So obviously then when the bugs come in and we have to run, then we're gonna completely mess up the code base. Now the problem is that this accidental complication accumulates over time. And one of the basic things you learn in agile estimation is you do relative estimation, right? Which is, in my book, a huge step forward compared to the original estimation approaches that come from old school project management, which I am, by the way. I'm a certified project manager. So, this relative estimation, how does it work when your code base is changing so dramatically that at some times accidental complication will totally overwhelm the essential complication? I'll just give you a very quick example. You need to add a new user to the database. The essential complication of that is not very large. But then you go through John's code, which adds a user to the database. And then you go through Mary's code, which also adds a user to the database in a different way. And then you go through Thomas's code, which also adds a user to the database in a different way. And suddenly you have a huge ball of mud that you have to deal with. Right? Essential complication, simple, dead easy. Accidental complication, this is going to take a rewrite, guys. We have to rewrite this whole thing. And if you think this is not true, I have a friend of mine who's now working at a company who's rewriting their system for the 3rd time. In 3 years. So talk about accidental complication. How long will that rewrite project take? I don't know, boss. This is the 3rd time we're trying, and we haven't been able to do it. Ever. Do you see where I'm going with this? When you're in that situation, what good is it to do relative estimation? The guys who did the first system, they're probably going to say, guys, this is dead easy. We did this in like 2 weeks. The guys rewriting the system have been doing it for 3 years. Right? That's what accidental complication means, which then begs the question, why are we even estimating in cases where accidental complication is such a large, overwhelming impact on the actual cost or duration of the project? Why are we even trying? And then there's the problem with queues. Some people take queues very seriously. Some of you might actually be that kind of people. Let's just do a very quick test. How many of you have more than 100 items on your backlogs? If you could raise your hands. Oh, there you go. 200 items on your backlog? About half. All right. So I don't know how long it will take to deliver all of those 100 or 200 items. I was working in an organization that had 100 items on their backlog. And that meant 4 years of work. They had a backlog with 4 years of work. When the item on position 97 was estimated, it was probably supposed to be about a week of work. Or maybe a month, who knows? But it's been there for 4 years. So what good is it to estimate when the biggest impact on the delayed delivery of value to our customers are queues? Somebody tweeted during this conference, I think it was Toby, if it wasn't, I'm sorry, whoever was the author, that coding faster is not going to make your organization faster. And he's absolutely right, because if the work spends most of its time in a queue, being faster at one part of the work has zero impact in the overall work. This is what the Lean guys call the waste to value ratio, right? The value added. And the waste to value ratio in most companies is below 10%, i.e. you spend less than 10% of your time working on something of value. In really, really great companies, it's more like 20%. There's still 80% of the time out there that is, by the way, unpredictable for a specific item. You can know it for the whole system, which is a very important detail to understand, but you can't know it for every single item. Therefore, you can't know it for these 3 items that are going to next release. But some people still argue that, yeah, we can be better. How many of you believe, okay, I won't ask you that because I think it would be an unfair question, but how many of you know someone, I ask for a friend, how many of you know someone that believes that we can and should get better at estimation? All right, let's look at the evidence, shall we? 2004 Chaos Report, 80% of the projects late or failed. 95, this is the report from 95, 68% of the projects were 51% or more late. Time overruns average in 2009, 63%, 2011, 63%. But I'm pretty sure some of you will not like the fact that I'm using the chaos report. It's okay. I've heard that story many times. So I looked for other data. Gartner Survey of Project Failure. Between 20 and 28% of projects fail. And fail is not about being late. It's like totally fail. It's like zero value. 20 to 28%. There's a lot more late projects in the other 80 to 72%. But failure, wow. Of the large systems that are, there's a problem there. Of the large systems that are completed, about 66% experience schedule delays and cost overrun. This is Capers-Jones, writing for the Journal of Defense Software Engineering, not Chaos Report. Traditional projects, this is Project Success Survey by Scott Ambler. Traditional project success rate, 53% failed or challenged. 53%. That's more than half. It's like throwing a coin and losing. But of course, we're agile, we're better, right? 40% failed or challenged. A bit better than throwing a coin. Bit better. So one has to ask, okay, so the chaos report wasn't that wrong all along. We just don't like to admit it that we really suck at our jobs. And I know I'm bad at my job when it comes to estimating. That's why I got estimation out of my job description. Because I knew I couldn't be good at estimates. I just couldn't be. There's no evidence out there that justifies the belief that we as an industry can be better at estimates. And let me be very clear. I look at this as an ethics problem. Most of the systems out there run on stuff we write. The money we pay in taxes is going to be, to a large extent, invested in software development. It is our darn responsibility to be better at what we do. But not better at estimates, better at providing value. Here's another one that I really, really love. And I think that if I look at it from a point of view of a business, when I look at this statistic, I have to say, what are we doing basing our business decisions on such a flawed tool like estimates. The stat is 17% of large IT projects go so bad that they threaten the very existence of the company. Think about that for a second. There's more data coming, so if you sign up to the mailing list, you'll definitely get the report when it comes out. But here's the principle. Principle number 3. Believe the data, not the estimates. But if you believe the estimates, do know this. Even PhDs in estimation promise you nothing better than losing 25% of your money 75% of the time. There's nothing said about the other 25% of the time. One can only assume because the results are even worse. If you go to your bank and your bank puts an investment proposal on the table, and the investment proposal is very clear. You invest 100,000 euros with us, and we're only going to lose 25,000. If you like the investment, I have one of such investments. It's 10 years, and I'll give you the 75,000 euros back 10 years later. I'm joking, of course. That would be unethical to propose such an investment, wouldn't it? So why are we doing this to our companies? And you don't need to believe me. These guys, Conte, Dunmore, and Shen, are actual experts in estimation. These are people who've spent their whole life studying how to get better at estimates. Do you think you can be better than them? Do you think you can come up with a reliable estimate that is better than what they quantify as a good estimate? If you think, go ahead, but beware, they've been spending all of their lives trying to do that. That would be a lot of money if they could. So principle number 4 is use alternatives to estimate-driven decision making. What alternatives, you may ask? Well, there's plenty of them out there. If you go to the blog, noestimatesbook.com, you will find 5 strategic decision-making, 5 decision-making strategies that do not require you to estimate anything. But there's more, right? Those are only 5. But here's the kicker. 17 projects, 1 company, from 2001 to 2003. Average delay for those projects, 62%. Pretty much in line with what the chaos report said. Project number 1, which is only like, 10% late, well, maybe 20% late. No clue what that project was. I was working in that company. I have no clue. Best project in terms of on-time record, number 3. I have no clue what that project was. But when I look at project 17, which was 200% wrong once all of the requirements were known. 200% wrong. That's pretty late, even for that company. Project 17 saved that company. Project 17 created a new business model, entered a new market, created a new revenue stream that is now about 50% of the revenue stream for that particular of the revenues for that particular company. So here's the thing. It's not only that we can't get better at estimates, at least I believe so, is that even if you do, there's no value in it. Can't you see the irony? The worst offending project of that company from 2001 to 2003 was the most valuable project. Thanks to that project, that company is probably alive now and would not have been otherwise. Now, think about this for a second. You're telling me that not only we can't get better at estimates, but even if we do, there's no value in that? Yes, exactly. That's what I'm telling you. How about that for a shocker? Imagine when I discovered that and I looked at all of my project management training years and I go like, what the hell have I been doing now? Of course, the only sane choice was to start doing something different. So here's the story. I was working with this company And they also had 100 items in the backlog, probably more. We didn't count them all because it was useless to even know how many items there were. And the team was totally discouraged. They didn't know what to do. They were, oh man, we're doing this again. Oh, this is really not nice. There was a bunch of small improvements, change of color in a button, change a string here, move some pixels up, whatever. It was a bunch of stuff that obviously was all important. It would not have gotten to the backlog if it were not the case. But it wasn't helping the team deliver any value. They didn't feel ownership in what they were doing. So the product manager, great guy, a visionary, if I've ever seen one, said, okay, let's pull the handbrake here on this. Let's spend 2 sprints doing something else. So one of those sprints, we did what we called an innovation sprint. We picked up a goal, strategic goal, which was, in that case, increasing the conversion rate for the overall product. This was an e-commerce site. And we focused on doing something to increase the conversion rate. So we used, simple things like impact mapping. Probably Goiko talked about it yesterday. I wasn't here, which was pity because I would have loved to meet Goiko again. Great work by Goiko. So I would definitely recommend you look into that, impact mapping. We did some impact mapping. We focused on one particular aspect of the customer, of the funnel of the e-commerce site. And we did something for that. And the feature was not like, it wasn't like building a Mars rover or anything. It was just like share on Facebook. And people suddenly were excited. It was like, wow, that means that actually if we build this feature, people will share it and people all over the world will know that our site exists. How cool is that? Right? I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but having other people out there know that you exist is kind of important for most humans. So we were all excited, me included, obviously. But then somebody said, hey, but there's another use case, like people use this website on the bus, right? Okay, fine. So if they're on the bus, they're probably not on their laptop. I mean, some of us would probably be, but the customers for this website would not be on their laptop. So maybe one thing we could do is, what if we just send a reminder? That's it. Send a reminder. Let's use email, right? Like something super simple. Send a reminder to the person that is looking at the website so that when they get home, they can pick it up from where they left off, right? So that they don't have to go back to the search and find it and all of that. Kind of a bookmark, very basic, very Stone Age kind of bookmark functionality. And the team said, yeah, okay, cool. That allows us to play with the mail server. Another cool thing to do. So let's do that. Working with the mail server wasn't as simple as we expected, ironic. But we did implement that feature. We went live, 2 weeks, 2 weeks of investment. We went live. How much did we estimate? Nothing. We said 2 weeks, we go live because we only have a sprint. We can't do anything else, so let's put this live. So we went live, and everybody was excited. Everybody was looking at the numbers and how many shares on Facebook we had and all of that. And suddenly we look at something, it's like, wait a minute, what does that mean? And somebody had pointed out that the share by email feature had just made a sale. Interesting. So that means that people are actually sharing links with themselves. Seriously? Yeah, and they're actually using that feature. And we just made money. We just made money. 2 days after we went live, the team had made money. I don't know about you guys, but when I develop software, I want to see the impact I have in people's lives. And when that came in, we had champagne, period. That's it, guys. We're going out for champagne. And we did. We celebrated. It wasn't much. It was one sale. It wasn't really a big problem, but we did. We made money, proved that the feature was valuable, and went on back to our endless backlog. Continued to develop. Funny thing, of course, is that the product manager that stayed behind said, hey, maybe we could do some changes here. And they kind of wiggled some of that stuff into the sprints that they did in the next few months. And I got an email in July. This went live in November, I believe. I got an email this July, and the product manager for that product told me, in the first 7 months of the year, this feature, this one single feature, we developed without anyone telling us. without even the support of top management, made 250,000 euros. How would you like to go to your CEO and say, "Hey John, I just paid your salary today"? Would you like to do that? I would love to do that, right? Salary is not a one-way street, right? We have to also pay their salaries, not just them ours. This totally transformed the equation of value. And we did this without any estimates. We did this with a very simple technique: impact mapping. Discover something, try it out, see how it works, improve it, leave it out. That feature still is the highest converting feature in the whole website, with I believe it's something like 5% conversion. So of 100 people using that feature, 5 will actually make a purchase. The rest of the website is 0.03. So they not only increased conversion, they created a feature that has hundreds times higher conversion rate than the website as a whole. So yeah, you could go home now, use that feature in your e-commerce site, and I just made you a bundle. Just send me an email, say thank you, that's enough. No need to pay. So principle 5 is test for value first. That's what matters. That's what we should be doing. Testing for value. Because the thing is, once you discover a feature that is powerful, that has an impact on your business model, who cares about the other features? You've just discovered something completely dramatic about how your product is helping real people out there. And it doesn't need to be an e-commerce website. It could be a patient data handling system. The testing is different, but it's the same principle. Test for value first. So all of those testers that are here in the room, I hope there's many of you here, this is what you should be doing. Forget the functionality. If there's no value, who cares if it's there? Test for value first. So the next question is, and I get this a lot, can this work with real businesses? I mean, come on. You're spending other people's money, right? So you have to be accountable, right? I mean, it's not professional not to say how much things will cost. It's not professional not to commit. I've heard this many times, and I bet you have as well. So here's a CEO. The good thing with CEOs is that he's only accountable to his own pocket. So yeah, he can do a lot more stuff than we can do if we're not CEOs, but if he goes wrong, there's a huge impact. This guy is not spending other people's money. He's spending his own money. And he's on the book, on record, Sven Ditz of Zeitgeist in Germany, he's on the book on record saying that we are using no estimates for my company. And here's how we do it. He explains that on the video. So can this be used in quote unquote real companies? No, only companies that want to make money. If you don't want to make money, and there's plenty of those out there, maybe you don't believe me, but even though they might say they want to make money, one thing is to say it, another thing is to act on it. That company, the story of that feature that I told you about, the management totally ignored that. They totally ignored that one team in 2 weeks was able to generate a feature that is currently generating about 500,000 of revenues a year. The management ignored it. So when you ask, are there companies out there really not trying to make money? I would suggest you look at their behavior, not at what they're saying. So principle 6, estimation is waste. Reduce its impact on your business. And this is what Sven did, and he very well explains it in the video. It's an awesome story, something that I wish more people would be sharing, and I will be looking into interviewing more CEOs to share their stories. But there's also principle 7. Measure progress only with validated running software. Because that's the second part of the story that Sven tells in the video. What they're doing is basically going to customers and showing running software. It's not about spending 2 to 3 weeks discussing a proposal that will end up in a contract that will take another 2 to 3 weeks to discuss. All of that costs money. Who's taking note of that, by the way? Sven says in the video, we're losing less money now that we have no contracts than we were before when we had to present proposals, negotiate contracts, come to an agreement. He's on video saying that. Coming back to the definition of a good estimate. Is this real? Here's a graph from Steve McConnell's software estimation book. This is a company that he uses as a data point in his argument. The definition of a good estimate, it's the blue line, right? It's 25% of the rose line, which would be perfect, not just good, perfect estimate. This is the actual completion days here on the left side, and this is the target completion days here on the bottom side. If all I've said is true, we would expect to see most of those crosses, which are projects, outside the definition of a good estimate, i.e. above the blue line. What do we see? Most crosses are above the blue line. If the data that I showed is correct, we would also expect to see some outliers, some projects that take so long that they are completely out of proportion with the original estimate. What do we see here on the top left? I don't know if this is 17%, perhaps the sample is not big enough, but we see all the symptoms. This is by the way, this graph is used by Steve McConnell to justify using estimates. The irony is uncanny. I cannot believe that someone goes to such length. I think he spends all of first chapter explaining how our industry is bad at estimates. And then he sells you a better method for estimation. Then there's the other problem. I'm only going to talk about one in detail. We can talk about the others later in the break. But who's been in a situation like this? Somebody comes in and says, hey, John, I actually have to go ahead and ask you to deliver 10 stories next sprint. Who's been in that situation? Hands up. So I've been in that situation in both sides. Both the one requesting as the one being requested. Obviously, if I were the one being requested, my reaction would have been, and it was, what the? But let's look at the data, shall we? This is an actual project. 21 sprints. That was a 1-week sprint project, so that's 21 weeks, almost half a year. This is their throughput, number of stories delivered per iteration. Notice how constant they are. We would call that the capacity of the system is between 2 and 4, most likely around 2 and 3, for the next foreseeable future. But look where the target is. How can we achieve that target? Any ideas? Split stories into smaller stories, right? Well, so we can't achieve that target if we lower the target. 4 teams, all right, Brooks' law would come into play. Would be interesting to see. The answer is it's unlikely that you will ever reach 10 stories throughput with that environment. If you want to get to 10, you change the environment. And this is another part that I think is completely failing us in the agile world when we talk about estimates, because estimates are one symptom of trying to force people to go beyond what the system, the organization, the environment, the policies, allows the team to deliver. Jim talked earlier today about what is the actual capacity. And all of that whip that comes from all sides, some of it hidden, some of it not even known by management. That whip is what forces this throughput. Without changing that, what hope do we have of speeding up the project? Not much, basically. Yet we try. But this is only one of 4. You see how good I estimated how many I would use. 4 dysfunctions. Actually, there's a 5th one, which I added because somebody suggested, hey, you forgot this sunk cost fallacy. By the way, sunk cost fallacy acts like this. I've already invested $1 million in this horse. It's not winning, but come on, I already invested $1 million in this horse, so why not invest, another 200,000? Sunk cost fallacy, in other words, is throwing bad money after good money, or something like that. Estimate bargaining, which was what we talked about. Come on, guys, 3 months to deliver this? When I was a developer. Internal politics. Which projects get approved by the board? The ones we lie the most about. I'll get together with, what's your name? Madeus. And we'll kind of cook up a new project so that our project is bigger than Janos's. And when we go to the board, we are 2 against 1. And the board will go like, okay, that seems like a reasonable choice. Let's go with that project. Internal politics. Blame shifting. How long will this take? I think 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, I go there. You said it took 2 weeks. Why isn't it done yet? See how that blame shifting works? You make a promise, now you're accountable for a promise. It's not my problem that I didn't create the conditions for you to perform. It's your problem you didn't keep your promise. You're not a team player. You're not committed. Are we allowed to use that word anymore? Of course, late changes, you're all aware of it. The system where you work has predictable outputs, just like the Shinkansen. You could bet that the Shinkansen will, on average, be less than a minute late during this year. And you would win, because it's predictable. That's why in the UK, nobody's betting that it's going to be less than 1 minute. They're probably betting on the second. Is it going to be 13 or 14 seconds this year, right? The system is predictable, but you have to learn to understand it. And if you want to know more about that, of course, there's the whole workshop, 1 full day where we go through this. And Jim's workshop tomorrow, I'm sure, will give you a lot of tools about how to understand a system of production. And I explained that in other talks and in the workshop if you want to know more. We also talk about that in the book, which you all get for free if you emailed me or SMSed me. So when you think about this and you run a business, you have to ask, is there really a better way to do that? Or are you just kind of scaring us to death? So my view, I do want to be very clear. This is my view. You have to build your own view of how it works for you. This is my view. This is a project where I actually used real data. And I answered the question, can we be more accurate by using story points? And of course then estimating the stories and projecting that into the future, or just counting the number of stories, just simply counting the number of stories. Now, the reason why I used story points is that it's not even a competition comparing to work breakdown structures, Gantt charts, or PERT charts. That's like so out. No one is doing that anymore. So the next big estimate approach is story point estimation. This is a large project, 24 sprints. And I asked this question, if I take the data from the first 3 sprints and then from the first 5 sprints, and I just project it over the next 21 or 19 sprints, what will be the best metric to predict the output of that project? This is only one project. There's 21 more in that database. By now there's probably 22 more, but I've lost count anyway. So you can use this database to actually test this yourself. This is data. Of course, I would suggest you test this with your own data. You have projects, use your own data. That's what I would suggest. But here's 21 projects you can try this on. So I looked at the predictive power of story points. The true output was 349.5 story points. Don't ask about the half. They just used half points. But the predicted output, if I took the velocity of the first 3 sprints for that team, would have been 418 story points. So you would have predicted an earlier release date than what the reality would have been. So you would have been 20% late if you had used that metric. Story points. The true output was 228 stories. The predicted output using data from the first 3 sprints was 4%, but 4% on the right side of the prediction, i.e. you would have been earlier if you had used that prediction. But there's, of course, an obvious caveat. Once you know more, once you have more data, there's the normal logical assumption that you would be more accurate. So I took data from the first 5 sprints and I asked the same question. Story points got better, 13%. Number of stories did not get better. It was the same 4% on the right side. I'm not saying you will get the exact same prediction accuracy as this particular project. I'm just saying that we found evidence of a method that is, at least in some cases, a hell of a lot better than what a good estimate is, and does not require you to estimate. So, which one was more predictable? But there's more. Here's another project. That's not my project. It's from a guy at Microsoft called Bill Hanlon. And he did this very interesting experiment. What if we just screw with the estimates? Like just change the estimates in the middle of the project. What would happen? Interesting question. So they estimated the whole backlog with 1, 3, and 5. Those were the estimates they created. They projected the release, which is, in my book, a hell of a lot better than trying to estimate the release. And they said, release on the 20th of October. Okay, that's cool. What if we just change the numbers? Like, just change the numbers. Why? Well, just because. Let's use 1, 2, 3. Not even, what is it? I blanked. It's okay, it's come back. Not even proportional. That's what I meant. Release on the 14th of October. 6 days difference. 6 days difference. Totally different numbers. But it gets better. What if we just use one story? No numbers, just one, or one number, to be accurate. Release on the 29th of September. All dates within 3 weeks of each other in a 38 to 42 week project, a margin of 8%. So the difference of projection between story points and just counting the number of stories is less than the definition of a good estimate. You probably would have thought the same if you were Bill. Bill said, after seeing that, I thought there's no point in estimating anymore. But yet they claim that this is a definition of a good estimate. Here's an email I got, this was a long time ago. Somebody who actually looked at all of their data and compared story point projection with number of stories projection. Here's what he said. The deviation between estimated and actual velocity would have been approximately 15% lower if we would have used no estimates. That means that if they had just counted the number of stories, they would have been 15% more accurate. Most estimation experts will promise you an improvement of 2 to 10%. And that's if you do exactly what they tell you. I'm just telling you, use the data you already have. And in a spreadsheet. That's it. He went on, we have analyzed data from 50 sprints. Not a fluke, 50 sprints. At no time was story point based estimation better than just counting the number of stories. That brings us to principle 9. And for me, this is the most important. I also run a business. And I know that running a business based on a tool as flawed as estimates is irresponsible. If you are handling other people's money, especially if you happen to work for the Finnish state in the local national healthcare, completely doomed, in my opinion, project, estimation is the worst way to achieve your objectives. So don't spend that money. Do something different. Release every week. Count the number of stories. Which is, by the way, nothing new, I want to say. I didn't come up with this idea. This idea has been there for a long time. I'm just talking about it more than others. That's it. So in the book, I tell the story of a project manager. And I want to emphasize project manager because it is not about an agile guru that somehow discovers magic. It's about a project manager that is put in a real tough situation. And I'm sure some of you at least will have been in that situation. Your boss comes to you, we have to deliver a bid tomorrow. Well, next week. Because we give you a buffer. And the bid is so important that if we don't bid and we don't win, we might actually have to shut down the company. Oh, and by the way, we already know what our competitors bid. So, hint, hint, we have to put a bid below theirs. How do you estimate a project like that? So this is what Carmen tries to do throughout the book with the help of a character that you will come to know and love over time, called Herman, the prototypical agile coach. Luis is laughing because he created that character. I just stole him. You can see Herman's stories in Luis's blog and in this book. This is what we talk about in the book. 7-step journey to no estimates. Because one thing I want to be clear is that I'm not asking you to go cold turkey. You live within an environment, within a system. You can't change the system in one day. But you can start today. You can start doing small things that will get you there, right? And this is what Carmen does throughout the book. Throughout the 7 chapters of the book, she goes through this process. So the book is available now. It has 2 extra mini books, which you will get if you SMS'd me or emailed me, which are about capacity planning, extremely important for large projects and large organizations, and agile contracts, extremely important for people whose business depends on actually having contracts that allow for agility. It also has 9 videos. So quite a lot of videos to watch and dig deeper into the topics that we are talking about. But I wanted to leave you with the last principle, and I believe this is the most important. Don't forget, what I gave you was information. If you want to change something, you have to take a step. The transformation starts with you. Thank you very much.